All right, welcome back to the Conquest Corner. On this one, we are continuing our going through of the brand new Spires, so all their updates and all. In the previous video, which, as of time of recording, released today, we did army rule, we did characters, and we did upgrades. So what we're going to take a look at then today is we're going to start looking through those units. Now, this was an entire rework. I'm just going to briefly recap the main sort of points of what they had. For your army rules, you essentially are split into three things, much like you did before, although what those splits do are a bit different. So for those splits, one of them, under Spire, hey, your drones can heal while broken, and they gain some Indomitable based on the bonus that they would have to the resolve based on number of stands, and drone and clones get regen +2. So if you're running army with a lot of those, maybe go under Spires. For the Directorate, always active once per round when you withdraw a command card, you can essentially take a look at it, put it next to the stack for a moment. You don't have to show your opponent, draw your next card, and that's the one that you're going to do. And that card that you chose not to do either goes on the top or the bottom after the other one. So essentially, you can change or alter the order in which you're going to do a few things. You have Sovereign Lineage. It's for your Avatara units. Avatar type units, so Centaur Avatara, all those sort of things. But essentially things that are husks. If the opponent has any wound markers on them, and you're going to clash or volley at them, you get inspired or aim shots. So you essentially get a free action with those units if your opponent has already been injured. The other thing is strain abilities. Now we're going to see those come into play today in this discussion because it hasn't come in yet. Restrain abilities, what they really do. Your unit has a draw event of the strain. If you have another draw event, then you do get that as well. You can do that you can do a draw event along with the strain draw event. Should you just trigger it, then you get the ability of whatever happens to say that you get. You do take decay. Decay is 1 wound per stand in the regiment, or 3 wounds if you are a monster. So depending on the number of wounds, most of your infantry are all like 4 wound models. So it could be multiple wounds, but you have to kind of see exactly those numbers. Some units do have some resistances to those. We're going to see some of those in our discussion today as well. But these are choice of whether you activate them. Also, if your opponent has something that stops draw events, it does not stop the strain event. So when we look at the units, we're also going to talk about those abilities as well. All right, keep in mind, if you want to pick up, any of these Spires or anything else, either those beasts, the Consumption Beasts or Desolation, I like both. I'm not sure if one by look is better than the other. So that's just me personally. Maybe Consumption, because I think you just do a lot of really cool things with a giant mouth all over it. But if you're looking to pick up that or anything else, we do have a discount code in the show notes below. Saves you 10%, helps out the show as well. So I'm going to put forward that. And let's get into some units. All right, so what we do for this, I have the new unit on the left, on the right is the old. And we're going to do a bit of comparison. Not necessarily pure like stat by stat piece, because depending on where you've been before, it may not matter. Once all this is done, though, I am going to do a separate video. I have a few different videos planned for this. One of the separate ones is just discussing sort of the new army as a whole, especially for people who you don't have a spot of comparison because you didn't play before, so it doesn't matter what they did before. But I do want to talk a little bit, especially, say you have a Spires army. What are we looking at now? How's it really different, the better or worse, and all of that? My hope is everything is better. So far, everything is. Other than, I guess, the High Clone Executor. His supremacy ability is worse, but it probably needed to be. All right, Bound Clones. Bound Clones are quite a bit more expensive. They're 40 points more for the unit, 10 more points per stance, they're 150 points, but you got a nice little glow up. So, you now remove 6 a little bit faster. You get 5 attacks instead of the old 4. Your resolve's also a little bit better sitting at that 3. They also now have the base draw event, a Bastion 1. So you do at least get that as well. So and these guys do have shields. So before they were 2 with shield and some support. They still have that support. They do have a Bastion now. So once they go, now they're sitting at base defense 4, which is very, very strong. Actually, one of the pieces we talked about the other day, one of the upgrades, was about essentially you get to fight on death no matter what. They're talking about, where do you go? Or if you're taking that, you're going into Bound Clones. And they do have some nice survivability. They are bodyguards, which helps so don't have to worry about challenges and things like that. and they base have cleave 1. So Clash 2, they don't necessarily hit on the best to start with, but 5 attacks with a cleave of 1, that's actually a pretty decent stat line. Inspired Drone 3 is getting half of them, so about 2.5 per stand, maybe 3 for the command stand and all of that. And not everyone has a leader, but everyone has a command stand now. These guys obviously have a leader. Everything here should. They mention it there. And banners for free. Everyone, when they get redone, you get your banners for free now. So they're Strain. They gain support +2. So they're naturally support 2. They can get up to 4. So essentially you can make it where they're pretty much hitting with all, or having the amount of attacks they would if they were in contact. Oh, and Lineage Guard. Let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about the bits and pieces about them. When High Clone Executor of a Lineage Highborn is attached to the regiment, it gains the Iron Discipline special rule. Keep in mind there is an upgrade that allows the Lineage Highborn to go into the unit and only the unit Abound Clones, if you choose to do that. Iron Discipline is always nice. Essentially, you get to ignore issues related to your resolves and all, in a certain way. It triggers off of you don't care about people being your flank for resolve, and there might be something else. But at the end of the day, a useful rule if he's in there. And if you're taking a High Clone Executor, this is probably where you're putting it. Lineage Highborn, if you want to take the upgrade, fine. But if you're taking the High Clone Executor and you're not making him a marksman or infiltrator, this is probably where he's going. Because at least he also has some survivability here as well. If you have a big enough unit, this Strain can be useful. Otherwise, if you're only taking, 3-4 stands, I wouldn't bother. The big thing is they're a good bit more expensive now. Yes, they are more survivable. They're a little bit faster, better resolve. They have a lot of glow up. And like I said, that cleave 1 is great. But I don't know if I want to bring like 6-7 stands kind of thing. I don't necessarily know if that's like, I guess. Wait, so it's clones. I always forget if that ability is clones or drones. I think it's drones. Or that, yeah, so your clones actually get the regen. Okay. And that as a draw event. Okay, so you could heal or do the other ability, because that actually becomes a draw event instead. Sorry, too far. I do think they're actually quite good now. They made them more expensive, so I'm not sure if you're going to take giant blocks, but a 4 brick or so for your High Clone Executor feels pretty good. Catabolic Node, so we'll just mention these now. We talked about this last time. Catabolic Node, essentially you choose when you're going to swing or when, I believe it's also the other time is when your unit's going to go away. It should have it at the end. Here it is. When a regiment is destroyed or when you're doing a clash, all enemy regiments, importantly, that engage with you, take a d6 plus 4 hits, and it applies to all those enemy regiments. The regiment will take that d6. And if this is when you're destroyed, who cares? That does mean if you have the High Clone Executor in there with that fights on death, and you have a Catabolic Node that has not gone off, you can actually be doing a lot of damage to your opponent. Ward Preceptor, they have, hey, it gives Tenacious 1. And the first 2 are 30 points. It gives Tenacious 1. In addition, once per round, when an enemy moves within 8, you can perform an out-of-sequence march of 2 inches without penalties for moving backwards or sideways, but you're not allowed to wheel. So if they're moving forward to, say, try to do a move charge, you could actually just step back too, and maybe now you're either out of charge range or at a very much rougher charge range. Assault Preceptor means you get to reroll 6s during clashes and volleys. That one's 20 points instead. So I'm a bigger fan of clones often than drones, because usually clones you take just a bit less, and I already have spots where I've painted 48 of a model. I really don't want to do that. So I do like these in a 3 to 4 pack. I would say even as a 4 pack, like I said, with the character in there, I think they can do a lot because they're decent survivability. If you're not choosing under Spire, then you just go straight to your draw event nice and easily. And they do have some other heal techniques and things like that. So, and Cleave 1 is very nice. So these guys now actually can fight something. So, and the Strain, if you really need it, if you're taking a giant unit, give them that extra support. Otherwise, a little bit more circumstantial to me in terms of I'm not so worried about using it just because I'm probably not taking giant units of these guys. I think you might be putting a little too much cost in. But honestly, big glow up from what they were before. All right, Desolation Drones. I just want them on the other side as well so we can kind of talk about where they were. All right, only a little bit more expensive, 10 more points, so they're 160 points now for these guys. They are that move 5. They still got their volley 2. They're on 4 attacks. They got an extra wound. But their resolve went down by 1. So they're resolve 2 now. So not very survivable. Well, at least they have extra wound. They're oblivious, which they were not before. So that change in resolve is worthwhile because you're going to need to fail a good amount more to actually get to the numbers they did before. Base lethal to -3. Barrage is 14 inches with torrential fire. They use okay, they can get to deadly shots and all like that. They used to have armor piercing 1, so they are now lacking that armor piercing base. Their strain will give them deadly shots. If you're bringing a pack of 3, that means you take the strain. It won't actually take out a stand. Or even if you're bringing 4, if you went a little wider, it's not taking out a stand. They're 55 points per stand. They used to be 40, so a good bit more per each. And they still have some processing agents. Upon an enemy regiment becoming the target of this regiment's volley action or lethal to my special rule, -1 to their defense until the end of the round. Oh, okay. So here's the big difference. Reprocessing agents used to be at the end of their barrage. When they were done shooting on all, they lose a defense. Now it's when you're targeted, and it happens immediately. So they don't have armor piercing, but they're going to lower your armor to start with by the 1. So they will benefit from it. So for all intents and purposes, unless you had multiple Desolation Drones, yeah, because the same rule is not going to stack, because it's not a, it shouldn't stack, I would think. At least that's, well, I mean, it's technically a minus, but let's assume for a moment it doesn't. Unless you had multiple units, it essentially makes them similar to what they did before. Although, yeah, because I mean, essentially they had armor piercing 1. Actually a little bit better in certain ways, because if you have hardened, when they had armor piercing 1, you weren't affected. I've lowered your defense. Hardened doesn't come into play. So yeah, actually reprocessing agents is better. They still have that torrential fire, but they had to do the strain ability to get deadly shots. And they can take Catabolic Note for 30 points if you want. So I like them. I think they're a very cool design. Lowering someone's defense is very nice, especially this army in the past. And we'll see what happens now. But this army in the past, I think, had a cleaving problem. There was a lot of units that in other armies might have cleave, like these big, strong things, and they just lacked it. They had a lot of flurry, so I get a lot of quality, but if you have good armor, I wasn't able to do much to you. Well, now I have a way I'm going to lower your armor. Now I'm going to actually do something to you. So Desolation Drones, similar points cost, and better overall. Oblivious more than makes up for the change in resolve. An extra wound is very nice. It helps with the strain ability, and whether or not you want that deadly shot. So I'm liking those. All right, Force Drones. If you just want the complete unwashed masses, they are the same points as they were before. No change in that. Additional stands are actually cheaper. It's poorly colored there, but it's 25. So they're 5 points cheaper for those additional stands. They are light. Everyone else before was medium. I should say that their base stats are essentially all the same. So they got their volley, they got their clash, they got their resolve, their defense all as 1s with 4 attacks, 4 wounds. They get their regeneration +2. That does mean if you take Under Spire, they should get more because it is a +2 to the rule. So they should actually be able to pull whole stands back. And since they are a drone, they can heal under Spires, even if they are broken. They are the shield and support true. So support 2. And their strain gives them lethal demise 1. We'll talk about more. There's some ways to buff it. On base, I don't care so much about that. Let's talk about a little bit more. Optimized fodder. They can only suffer a maximum of 8 wounds from any given instance of the decay special rule. In addition, so this regiment consists of at least 6 stands during list building. A strain ability permanently changes to lethal demise 2, whereas the regeneration draw event permanently changes to regeneration plus 4. So if you're taking them in a big enough group, if you're taking 6 or potentially more stands, and I've seen groups of these at 8, 9, you are capped at the number of wounds that you're going to take, which is nice. Then your lethal demise becomes useful. Although keep in mind, lethal demise, as written currently, is related to who does the damage to you, to the enemy regiment that did the damage. So it's not really going to, at least the way it's worded for the moment, it's not going to trigger off of that. But you can get some good lethal demise, and you get some very strong regeneration. So you'll be at the point of effectively bringing back 2 stands, especially if you choose Underspire, because then you don't care if you're broken. So you're getting 6 to 8 and so on. You're getting a good amount of wounds back. You can effectively undo the damage that you'll do to yourself if you choose the lethal demise. Privileged Observer. Before the first reinforcement round of the game, should a Biomancer or Fairmancer be attached, you can make them medium. So you can choose, if you need to make these guys score. You will have to wait an extra turn for them to come in, but now they can score. Keep in mind, in the past there was some Biomancies that could turn someone to a scoring regiment, essentially. Made them, I think it made them medium. I forget if it made them heavy. I think that was the City-States thing. But I can make them medium if the character's in there, so I can make it so I score. What they lost was they're purposely mindless, which meant, hey, they use the highest resolve no matter what happens. These guys break, they're still going to use a poor resolve. They no longer have that rule. But they heal a good bit better base than they used to, because the heal is now on them, where before the heal was on the characters. Your Biomancer had like base heal abilities and all like that. But now it's actually when the regiment goes. And there is some ways to get more healing out as well. I know there's one of the Biomancies that does it as well. So if you were taking them before, you're still going to be taking them, and I think you're going to be happy with what they do. Like I said, I can't imagine you taking these guys in like less than 6, really. I guess you could, but even if you put a character in there, they're only on defense 2 with the character's resolve, which is decent unless something bad happens. So I guess you could put, maybe if you have the intention of a backfield Biomancer or Fairmancer, you can put them in a smaller unit. That way they're cheap. I can make them medium. If I don't need the abilities, because before the first reinforcement round of the game, so I don't have to choose until that happens. I can see what my opponent brings, and do I need board presence to start with? If I know they're a bit of a slow army, hey, you got a lot of activations, or maybe you only have a few. Well, maybe I want them to be medium, because you're going to run out of stuff to go stand on different objectives with. So nothing crazy to write home about, but they're solid. If you took them before, you're going to like them now, and I think you're going to like the overall changes that they have. I'm not so concerned with the lethal demise thing, I guess, unless you were running just, unsustainably large units. But that was never my sort of thing, personally. All right, Marksman Clones stayed effectively the same in terms of points and all. They're 50 points. 150 points a unit, a regiment, 50 points a stand. They are the same exact stats, but they did get an evade. They knew at least have evade 1 on their defense 1. They're shooting in it, so they don't want to try to get into the combat very much. With base volley 2, they are 5 attacks at range at their barrage, but only 18 inches. They lost 2 inches. They still have the arcing fire, so they can still, if they've aimed, remove the aim bonus to be able to shoot things out of line of sight. Still within arc, but essentially something in the way. And their strain lets them be armor piercing, which is a nice to do. I mean, you do have an Assault Preceptor if you want to add some rerolls into there, but I can give you Armor Piercing 1 depending on the target. What's nice about that, at least, is with it being the strain, yes, there's a negative to use it, is I will take a few wounds. I will take some wounds. But before I decide to take it, I can choose whether or not it matters. Oh, you're going to use your evade anyway, all of that. I'm not going to worry about the armor piercing. I didn't have to pay more points for it. The problem would be is if you had the base rule, then you're going to be more expensive. It's not always going to come into play. But they lost about 2 inches of range, but that's pretty much true across the board. Most things that were shooting about 20 are now down to about 18. It's like Caratids. Caratids I still don't think are... Yeah, Caratids are the shooting. Carnivores should be the close combat. They haven't changed, but most other things have. They were at the 20. Or even a little bit above. Some things were like 22. I think at one point these guys were actually 22. But they've knocked them down to about that 18. Marksman Clones are great. They're a nice long-range shooting threat, especially if you can aim first. And on turns when you care, give them some armor piercing. They said we have some multiple ways to heal. Not insane amounts of healing, but you have enough healing to be able to make up for that. And if someone is getting to your Marksman Clones, you're already probably in a bad shape anyway because they've made it to the furthest back of your field. So still great. Still like them. Honestly, I still would take a unit. Anytime I play, I always take at least a unit of Marksman Clones. You want to be able to hit someone from a range and have it matter. And Marksman Clones are very, very good at doing that. At least now you also have Leonine Avatara, but still. All right, Onslaught Drones. 135 points per the unit, 35 per stand, so a bit more expensive. For stats, they are looking the same to me, but they did get an evade. That's a nice change. At least you got a little something. They have... So before they would have burnout. Burnout was essentially a rule that they gave, and you got some bonuses, but then you took a decay. They've essentially removed that. You get counterattack, you get Oblivious, and Flurry. So Resolve 2 with Oblivious, not too concerned about that. That really helps out a lot. The Flurry is nice because you are 5 attacks based on 2, maybe on 3s if you're inspired. So now you actually, as someone who's played an T back when they were like Clash 2, 2s with Flurry actually get you results. I said they do have counterattack for once it hits them. And their Strain, Adrenal Hysteria, they get plus 2 inches to the charge distance and gain Line Breaker. So you are paying a little bit more for them. So that's what I'm noticing. This army, points actually went up. You got a little bit less than you used to. But they're move 5. You could make it a 7 if you need to, and give them Line Breaker. So if someone is Shield or Bastion, especially that Bastion +1 sort of thing, like Old Dominion, where you could have some units get up to 5s because they're Shield with double Bastion. Well, no, I can knock you back down to 2s. But again, situational of when you want to do it. But if you need it, if they are shielded up and bastioned up, now your Flurry and all that is absolutely going to get into people. So, and they can take a Catabolic Node, that's it. I wouldn't, if you're taking the one upgrade where you can set like 3 off, cool, go for a lot of Catabolic Nodes. Otherwise, I think they're very expensive. I'd put them in more throwaway units. I don't know if these guys are quite as throwaway. And the nodes actually are more expensive than they used to be. Oh, sorry, but they did have Line Breaker before, so they always had that. But at least now they got the Flurry. Line Breaker when you're on base 2s is nice. But again, if you didn't roll well, it doesn't matter what cool special rules I have. If you have a rule of I get to do an awesome thing when I roll a 1, if I don't roll 1s, it doesn't matter. In this case, same sort of thing. But at least with Flurry, you're going to get a lot more successes out of them. So, stayed the same sort of pattern, but definitely stronger than they were before. And yeah, that's worth the difference of 20-some points. I think for sure. Also with the Oblivious. So they'll just survive better. They can actually take some of a hit. All right, Stryx. At one point, I just hated Stryx. I got what they were going for, but they just didn't inspire me with what they were. Let's take a look at them now. So, points cost, staying the same. 120 points for the unit, 40 points for the stand. They are a little slower. They used to be move 10. They were move 8. They're now move 8. They used to be 10. Still 4 attacks on 4 wounds, 1 resolve, 1 defense, 2 evade. They have a base lethal demise 3, so the lethal demise is lower. Used to be 4. They fly, of course. They're regular. They're not setting any lines for you. And opportunist, so if they can get into the sides or to the flanks or rears of people, they're going to get a little bit more. Probably more likely to get into the side. They're strained. I'm not going to bother. The second word is lateralization. Telepnetic. They gain the disruptive special rule. It says, hey, disruptive, if you're in contact with this regiment's front arc, you get -1 to your clash, to a maximum of -1. So you can't stack more than a -1. Oh, actually, that's what was on. I think they formatted it a little poorly. Desolation Drones, to a minimum of -1. That 1 should be in the parentheses as well. That's what we're talking about. So you won't be able to stack it because you can't take more than a -1 off. Okay. All right. How do I feel? Okay. I don't know how I feel about these guys because it's still. Oh, and their clash is worse. They used to be clash 2, the clash 1. So now they're only effective if they get into the side for that. So before, they were a sort of get in your way piece. They are meant to slow you down. And at speed 10, I can hit you a lot faster than you'll hit me. Maybe I'll do some wounds on the swings, but even if not, I have lethal demise 4. So essentially for every wound you do to me, I'm going to do 1 back. Or I have a shot at doing 1 back. So I wasn't huge on them, but in their army, I just wasn't a big fan. When I take a look at it now, the problem is it's the strain to get disruptive. So obviously they can rush up, and you would choose a turn when you're going to hit into someone. I guess you're just pure now going for annoyance. I'll lower your clash depending on your number, a -1 to your clash. That -1 could make it where now, I mean, I've played with plenty of rivers and all that lower your clash for the stands in it. A -1 on certain things can be absolutely devastating. If you were playing into Old Dominion, Stryx are currently one of your best things that you can have, because making you -1, a lot of their clashes for their base sort of things are like 2s. I'll put you to a 1. You're not naturally inspired when these guys would probably be doing their most work because they're light. You're just not going to bother hitting me. And I'm evade 2, so at least I have a decent evade no matter what if you actually do hit me. I would have to play them to see what I truly think. I'm not going to say that they're bad. I think their role has changed a little bit. Yes, before they were trying to essentially get to your opponent, annoy them, and do some damage. Essentially from them getting destroyed. They are still doing that. However, with the opportunist, maybe now what you're really trying to do is hold them back a little bit till you have some other forces on, and put them, sorry, go this way for the camera, put them off to the side so they can hit into people's flanks. They can get their opportunist, so maybe they'll actually get some damage then because they'll be on 2s inspired. Maybe they'll get something in. But then they can disrupt to lower some by 1. I'm more survivable. I'm in your side, so unless you want to reform to face me, and if you're reforming to face me and not inspiring, then effectively you're almost essentially down by 2 if I've done the strain ability. Because when you look at a stat line, you usually assume, yeah, but they can inspire, so you're really more on this number. And then if they want to face them, great, because then you're going to get side charged by something that matters more, or something that matters more will hit them in the front, do its attacks, and when they swing back, well, they're still at that -1. They're just going to hit much less effectively. So I don't think they're the throwaway quite the same way. Sorry, trying to pause when I yawn. I don't know, I'm tired. I slept decently, I think. So, yeah, I mean, if they're rushing at you with like some Flame Berserk or something like that, yes, throw them in the way, to stop that. But otherwise, or werewolves or something like that. But otherwise, I want them to stick around. I want these guys to try and survive. So I'm going to try to keep them alive for a while. To try to do something. I'm still not a giant fan of them, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just got to use them and get creative with them. Vanguard Clone Infiltrators. So they're 10 points cheaper. They're 150 points for the unit, 50 points per stand. So they got a good bit cheaper overall. They are the same move, same volley of 2. They're down to Clash 1. That's all right. They're more of a shooting unit. 4 attacks, 4 wounds, 3 resolve, a defense, and 2 evade. So they lost fluid formation and they got acute senses. This is a change we've seen in a few spots. Acute senses is the second, effectively, to an extent, the second part of fluid formation is that all of your arcs count as front arcs. So you can theoretically shoot from the side and count as your front arc, and other stands in front of you don't cause problems for line of sight. There is some problem with that, though. So we have it pulled up here. So acute senses, hey, they count all their arcs as front arcs and ignore stands in this regiment for the purposes of determining line of sight and checking for obstruction when performing volley action. What most of us believe that's supposed to mean is that you shoot fully no matter your orientation, size, none of that stuff matters. But that's not why units, say like the front stands of a shooting unit, why are they the only ones who are allowed to shoot? Is because the rule essentially is stands behind them can't shoot. It wasn't exactly the obscuring, at least in the way it was worded originally, it wasn't that. I'm sure the intention is supposed to be that just everyone gets to shoot, because otherwise why would you care about line of sight? Although it would be nice for them to clarify that 100% that yes, that's what it's supposed to be, or alter a little bit of the wording, but I'm sure that's what it's supposed to mean. Be absolutely useless if it wasn't. The big thing then is essentially they don't get to rotate, which was good. Still got Vanguard 4, so move 6 Vanguard 4. That does mean they can move 10 inches with a 12-inch shot, five shots at 12 inches. So they actually can hit some people close to the middle of the board. Loose formation, so a little bit better at getting shot. And they naturally have aim shots. So they're volley 2, they're really on volley 3. So it means you could always move and shoot. They did not have aim shots before, so a little bit cheaper, and that is a really big gain. As someone who's been playing Weaver Courts mostly lately, being able to do that is super, super useful, because now your shot really isn't 12, your shot is 18. Or up to 18, because that move first really makes a difference. Because 2 to 3 feels important. Their strain, hypersynaptic bonding. When an enemy regiment becomes the target of this regiment's volley action, it does not benefit from obscuring and lose formation until the end of that activation. Again, what's nice is since it's the strain, you can choose to do it or not. That means you're not paying more points for having access to the rule because you're going to pay a penalty in wounds. I do like that, especially how many times people have been obscuring or lose formation, that sort of stuff. Hey, now I don't care about any of that. Swift Retreat. Oh, sorry. Acute Senses is on their thing here since it's a new rule. Swift Retreat. Performing withdrawal action. This regiment always counts as having performed a clean withdrawal. So you're not going to lose, you're not going to take the D6 per stand where you're going to lose your whole unit. And may choose not to reform facing away from the enemy regiment they withdrew from. Normally when you withdraw, you essentially face away and move away. That doesn't have to be the case here. So to me, that sounds like they essentially can rush at you. You can leave and then still shoot them because you could be facing them. So I don't know if that's as good as it sounds. It sounds really cool. Hey, you hit me. I'm going to walk away and shoot you. Clean reform, I'm pretty sure you still take damage on. You take D6. We can check that real fast. The reason why I'm not sure if that's as good as it sounds. So I said clean reform. It's a clean withdrawal you're doing. Clean withdrawal, and then you're not forced to reform facing away. Yeah, clean withdrawal, if you get it, you still take D6 wounds. Which is fine, but so why I'm not sure. Okay, Vanguard Clone Infiltrators are better than they were before because they're cheaper. They have, acute senses, then fluid formation hurts, but okay, that's a true thing going to be kind of across the board. The loose formation is very nice. They did lose 2 inches off the shot, and they did lose the rapid volley, but you do have the aim shots, which really helps out a lot. So overall, a bit of an alteration, but I like compared to what they did before, and you do have an ability to ignore people who are going to half your number of shots. For the swift retreat, though, the problem is if someone actually hits you, your evade 2, resolve 3, maybe 4 if you have enough stands or whatever, but pretty low defensive stats. Not a decent resolve, but I'm probably going to lose some stands taking that hit. And then I'm going to try and walk away. I'm going to take d6 more, and then I do still maybe get to shoot you. I am aimed, so at least I'll be hitting you better. But like if you're a 3-pack, depending on what they're hitting you with, I'm probably gone, or I've lost at least a stand. And then when I leave, that d6, there's a decent chance I'm losing another stand, because they probably didn't do 4 wounds to me. They probably did 5, 6, or 7, or so, or maybe more. But even if I lost 1 stand, my other stand's probably got a couple wounds on it. I roll more than like a 2, I might lose that stand as well. Now I'm down to 1 stand. Unless you're taking a giant unit of these guys, and I don't know if I see that happening. Especially with, I mean, okay, if you took a big unit, the fluid formation wouldn't help anyway. I guess technically this rule might help you more. And acute senses matter, fluid formation matters less when you get an extra action automatically, to an extent, because you have aim shot. So you could just do a reform. Yes, it costs one of your actions, but you're not having to aim. So for all intents and purposes, that's a pretty fair trade-off. And acute senses let you shoot full. Acute senses let you shoot full to the side is very strong. But I will say that, like I said, the issue I have is I think that swift retreat sounds better than it is, unless you're taking a really big unit, or whatever hit you was like, I hit you with a 2-pack origami, and their only point, or this light thing, their only point is to tie you down. They're not even going to hurt you. Because if they're going to hurt you, you're probably just not going to be there, or not much left. So, and they can take the assault or ward preceptors. I'm not as keen on these with some of the other shooting options. Marksman's, I like a little bit more like, yeah, if you hit the marksman, you're kind of gone anyway. These guys are about the same price as a marksman, actually. And I don't know if you're gaining that much, per se. I guess always being aimed is good, though. Well, it is good. Maybe that's enough. I'm not sure if it's enough. Vanguard Clones went up 5 points to 145 for the unit, but dropped 10 points per additional stand, so not only 40 points extra stand. They move 6 to volley 1, sit on clash 2, 5 attacks now instead of 6, 4 wounds, 3 resolve, 2 defense, but now only 1 evade. They do have their shields, they do have the Vanguard Force, so they got some really good movement, and now they've gained loose formation. So a light unit, the previous ones, my apologies, these ones were light as well. Vanguard Clone Infiltrators are light. But for these Vanguard Clones, being light means what you're most likely taking wounds to early is probably shooting stuff. So loose formation is really going to help that quite a bit. And with the shield, you're really sitting at defense 3, so not bad overall. Their strain gives them +1 to their attack, so to get them back to the old 6 attacks they used to have. They essentially didn't have anything else before. So for 5 more points, loose formation, yeah, I would take loose formation on a light unit for 5 points. Absolutely. I know the points comparison isn't entirely fair, even though it's the old one, but it's still worth looking at how much does it change your list. If someone goes up by 15, 20 points, you might really have to change your list just because of the number of units that you have. Inherited Excellence. Any regiments in contact with this regiment's front arc take -1 to their tax characteristic when resolving class actions against this particular regiment. So this is your get into someone's face and stand there unit. Stryx want utility. Stryx actually want to do something. Where these guys, -1 to the attack, you're on the defense 3 with that resolve 3, assuming they don't have something that removes your shield for that defense. Now pretty decent, and if it's not going to take out a stand, you could add extra 1 to their attacks. It's a good strain. I don't know if I would. It's very circumstantial. If I can get the hits in, So if I'm the one getting the charge in, I probably do use it. If I've already taken a hit, I might lose more attacks than I gain because I'm going to lose a stand. And a stand is losing 5 attacks. So that strain is much better about if I'm essentially fully healed. I'm not going to lose someone. So I can't have anyone with even a single wound on them, assuming you're 3 stands. If you're down to 2, you might be able to afford it easier. So reasonably cheap. I do like that -1 to the attack characteristic, and it's this regiment's front arc, so you could still try to hit them into the side. But this is your light unit that gets into someone and just makes them stay there. Depending on what exactly you're hitting, of course, but I like these. And at 6, they're not even that much different in speed than Stryx. So yeah, I think these guys are the ones that are going to push forward and stop someone for a little bit. And I think Stryx are biding their time to get other people a bonus. Because this bonus doesn't help anyone else, where the Stryx bonus does. So if you liked them before, I think you're going to like them now. They're a bit better than before. Still not super awesome to me, but that's okay. All right, Avatara. Now we're getting to things I absolutely love. I've always loved Avatara. They're 15 more points than they used to be. So they're 175 points for the unit, 55 a stand. They used to be 50, so they're a bit more expensive. They're a little slower because they're only move 6 now, but they are a better clash. They're base clash 3. Remember in the past, there was ways to get them to clash 3 by spending some points under certain circumstances, taking the right subgroup essentially. So they really were about 170. So really probably about 5 points less if you're taking that. They do have 5 attacks, so they hit better with more attacks. Still 4 wounds, 4 resolve, 4 defense, 2 evade. So an expensive unit that can dish it out. But if you can lower their defenses, they don't take it very well. They do have the cleave 1, which is great. They do have some impact, and they got that support too. Their strain, they gain flawless strikes. Okay, so ones you wouldn't get defense against. Add superior creations, they take 1 less wound when 7 effects of decay. 1 less wound for the regiment, which is super, super important when you only have 4 wounds a stand. All right, so in the past, you would have bought them to be Clash 3, at least in the main list that I always saw running. You probably wanted to do that. So you have a very similar profile. You're a little bit slower with more of an attack. And then you have a way to get flawless strikes if it matters. Flawless strikes especially, you're going into, say, Ash and Dawn, you're probably just going to want it. The 5 attacks, you'll have a good amount of attacks. You'll have 15, 16 with your leader stand, assuming you still have 3 stands left, or you might have more. But let's just assume 3, since that's the base size you come at. 16 with that, you're looking at 2 to 3, so you're nearly sneaking in those wounds. You might be getting more in, depending on what you roll, and being at cleave 1 is helpful. They are husk, so keep in mind there is some ways to get them an extra clash. So you could actually essentially have them, effectively you can make them inspired. So that way, if you're, let's scroll back to the thing where it is. Spend a lot of time on this because this is the one I like. There it is, Sovereign Lineage. If the enemy's already been hurt, then hey, you get inspired. So you won't have to spend the action inspiring, which means if you're already in combat and they're low, you could take them out and then be allowed to move or charge someone else. This is a unit that hates to be stuck out because you don't have the wounds to take the hit. You really have to be the one dishing it out, and you have to time it very, very well. Unlike when you look at some other units that, in my mind, do a good job, but could take a bit of a hit. Yeah, your defense 4, but you're only 4 wounds. Just make me roll dice. I roll enough dice, I will lose these guys, wholesale. And if you happen to have a little bit of cleave, lo and behold, if you got cleave 2 on 2s, no, my unit's going away. So the last thing they want to do is take a charge from someone who wants to hit them with a charge. There's multiple cav units that when they charge in, they do you tons of damage. So there's something to watch out for. Well, hey, if the unit's already hurt, I don't have to inspire. I can swing, hopefully take them out, and then I can be the one to charge forward instead. I'll get a little bit of the impact, which is nice, but at least then you don't get your brutal impact and all of that onto me. So overall, better. I do think better. Still very fragile, but overall, I've always loved Avatara. I'm going to keep doing that. You know, taking a lineage highborn in a unit of Avatara with maybe a second unit of Avatara waiting around, I think is still a very valid strategy. And we know there's some upgrades that you can put on it and something that the lineage highborn, I know he does something else that helps. Yeah. Oh, he naturally has this, that is imposing excellence. Yeah, he can give that unit parry. So your opponent doesn't get all the rerolls and everything like that. So it helps him out a little bit for survivability. And his supremacy can do a lot because, hey, on one turn, your 6s are 1s. And if you use your ability that makes full of strikes, that means you're doubling the amount of times you get it. So loving them. Think they're very good. Let me know if maybe I just like them too much and I'm saying they're good no matter what. But that's me. All right, picking up back here with Brute Drones. It's been a little bit, but back to it. All right, so for Brute Drones, they are now 20 points cheaper. Their purpose is different, I guess maybe is the best way to put this. So they're 150 now, 45 a stand. So 6-inch move, they still got the volley 1, they got the clash 2, they are still sitting on 5 attacks. Their resolve is down by 1, their resolve is base 3 now, set 4. They do have the Oblivious, they did have as well before, but at least with Oblivious, 3 is fine. They now have Linebreaker, which is something new. They have the Unstoppable as always. Oblivious, their impact 3. This is a unit, like, if you have the army, I don't even have the army. I just have like a box of, like an old starter box, and I have a unit of these, so everyone's got them. And, you know, so that they're a fairly standard sort of unit, and their strain gives them cleave +1. So they can get themselves some cleave. The big difference is in the past, they had flurry, and they no longer have flurry. So they're naturally hitting on 2s. You can get them to 3s. So previously, if you were inspired and took your swings, you'd hit, 75%. Now you're hitting instead 50%. But if someone has shields and bastion, you are more effective the fewer amount that you get through. 6 attacks a pop. Actually, my apologies. Yeah, 6 attacks now. They used to be 5. So they got an extra attack, but they lost the ability to reroll. So if you're going against the correct target, if they minimum have a shield or a bastion, now maybe they are doing a little bit of both, like some units do have. We've seen one here at least. I know some other spots have that as well. Then yes, then you are more effective. The fact that you can give them some cleave can make them more effective. They're a little bit cheaper, which is nice. But losing that flurry, honestly, losing the flurry is very, very painful, especially if for some reason you can't be inspired. You charge someone and you're going to go through terrain to do it. When you have flurry, you're not nearly as worried because with those rerolls, you're still going to get a reasonable amount of hits. You're looking a bit over half statistically, or pretty close to about half statistically, where now you're getting a good bit less. You're only getting about 1 in 3. So better quality, potentially much lesser quantity. Though the extra 1 attack does help balance it a bit. To me, I'm back and forth on these. Now again, remember this is initial impressions, haven't tried them out, and this information's been out for like a day. I have yet to sit down and do list building. That's something I'm going to do later. What I am seeing with these guys though, so only Ferromancers and High Clone Executors take them. Yes, and your, forget what his technical name is, your Merchant Prince can take anyone. Sure, the Merchant Prince, there's no reason to do that because your Merchant Prince would have to take him as restricted, save him for something else. But I'm seeing, okay, if you're taking a Ferromancer, decent choice. Ferromancer also, as we see, takes them as mainstay. So whereas Lineage, sorry, not Lineage, my apologies, High Clone Executor takes them as restricted. And again, there's probably some of these other restricted I might want more, maybe. But I do kind of like it with a Ferromancer. I like it with the eccentricity of Avatar projection. So that way your Ferromancer can actually go in that unit. It's a reasonably survivable unit with a reasonable save on that 3. Is it the okay resolve on the 3? Oblivious to help that out. Goes in that unit a little bit better. If they happen to be your warlord, then you could instead, if they have hardened or something like that, or if you really need it, you can up the clash and the march to make it a little bit easier for some of those charges. And you could make it where his regiment doesn't take wounds from decay, so they can always be either one more clash if someone has hardened, if not, just always cleave 1 effectively. And for his Pheromancies, so they said that the abilities don't stack. That just means that you can't get the same ability from multiple sources and up them. And you can only be targeted once. But Pheromantic Drive is an aura, and it would affect them. So they get to reroll some resolve rolls of 6, and his unit would then get Tenacious, so you're really upping their ability to survive. If you just want to take a 3-pack because you have them, because you probably have them if you have Spires, cool. I think you'll be fine with that. They don't necessarily instill to me like, oh, here's all the awesome things I'm going to do with them. But if I'm taking them, especially because I'm, say, taking a Pheromancer, I'm taking these guys, I probably am going to test putting them in there, using some of those abilities, and see if I can give them just that little bit of an extra tweak to really get something going. Especially because, yes, they're a bit more survivable, but I want to use their cleave anytime they're in combat, where some of these other ones have been very up in the air or more situational. Even, okay, flawless strikes on Avatara. Yeah, but if someone has decent evade, I don't necessarily care. Or, am I always worried about doing that? Maybe not. I guess if someone has good evade, you don't have to worry about the cleave either. But I'm not always concerned about that. Oh, and you got a little bit lower wounds. We have sort of issues. No, cleave 1 I kind of always want unless you have hardened. Because that with Line Breaker, now I'm actually putting you to often nearly no save unless you have a good evade. And even then, your evade has at most a 1 or a 2, probably. So I'm putting you down to 2s, pretty good. Or if I'm facing, some cav types and stuff like that, I might be almost taking away all your save. So I think they have a good place. I don't foresee taking more than like a pack of 3. Unless I'm putting my Pheromancer in there, then maybe I go to pack of 4 with a Pheromancer, and their job rush into people and go to those middle to heavier targets that are shielded. Potentially Bastion, but often what you see at least is a shield. So overall, I like them. I like that they're cheaper, and they can impact a lot more than they did before. But you want to choose something, the right thing to go into, because losing that flurry, it does hurt. But you got some options. But I think you want to give them a little bit of help. All right, Incarnate Sentinels. 220 now. They went up by 10.65 a stand. Cheaper per stand, but more overall. So these guys are heavy. Sorry, the last ones were medium. So now you're looking at, honestly, I think the first heavy that we've actually taken a look at. Move 6 now, so they got a little bit slowed down. They lost their resolve. Their defense is still good at 4, and their resolve actually went up to a 4. Still sitting on 6 wounds. They have their 5 attacks. They have the nice clash of 3. So these guys are cleaved to with their impact, but now they have a little bit of something extra. They have Fearsome, and they have Fearless. Fearless is nice. Fearsome is one of those rules that, okay, I'm never unhappy that you get a you get a special rule. Will it happen very much? No. But could it be useful on that time that, I make you actually have to roll your resolve to do your reform in combat and you fail it, and now you don't get to, and you've wasted an action? Yeah. So it's a nice to have it. It's no way a super awesome thing, but nice to have. So they also do have superior creations. So they're going to take 1 less wound from the decay, and their strain is trample. Okay. They are overall better than before, because for 10 points, you're getting more resolve for more survivability. You're getting Fearless, Fearsome. I think that's a fine trade-off for 10 points and losing an evade. When you're on defense 4, if someone's hitting you that hard, or I don't know, smite or whatever like that, you weren't getting through it anyway. Losing the inch of movement does hurt, I will say. But overall, I do like that. The trample... Okay. The trample is very good. It doesn't synergize necessarily with some of the other things they're doing, because this is one of the first spots where we've seen that. But on a 3-pack, gaining trample 3, so that's 9 on the unit. It is, I mean, that is very, very strong, because trample, yeah, trample should be worded that it goes to each one. Yeah, yeah, it would be per stand, I would think, of the wording. So, assuming it's not just a hit of 3, I think it should be 3 per stand. That could be 9 extra at the end, so that could really be upping the level of damage that Incarnate Sentinels do. And these guys are already cleaved 2, so they're already doing a good amount of damage with 5 attacks on Clash 3. They're a little bit more survivable with that Fearless. The Fearsome could help them out as well, but being able to stack on some extra trample at the end, if you're looking at an opponent or a unit and you don't think you're going to be able to carve through them, this is a great way to get that extra damage in, or to potentially get that extra damage in. And at 6 wounds, you know, taking 1 wound per stand isn't really that bad, because you have a good amount to be able to survive through. Who actually takes incarnates? Sorry, the rules there I keep going back to. So, sorry, let me do it this way. Biomancer, incarnates, and so restricted on him. I mean, I guess technically he could go in them as well with that upgrade as well that we talked about. For his, and it's true for the other one, there is always, obviously everyone could use the unstable enhancement and get +1 clash if they're not already at a 4 kind of thing, to up them for the values, of course. Incarnate, no on the high clone. Yes, as restricted on lineage. Just the lineage highborn. Merchant Prince we know can restrict anyone. And so he's looking at Biomancers. So Biomancer's lineage highborn, other than, of course, the Merchant Prince. So for the heavies that we start looking at, I really do like these guys. I think I'd probably put a unit in any list that I build right now, because also this is the spot with, until we get to maybe some bigger monsters, the spot with good cleave has the impacts and has a way to help guarantee that I can get through the last bits of damage I need. Think of how many times you've had Wadroon dinosaurs hit you, smack you, all this kind of stuff, and then there's just this extra bit at the end. So Incarnate Sentinels, definitely better. I do like them a lot. I would be putting them in most of my lists, at least right now. And they, as monstrosity, they don't benefit from a lot of the other rules, because most of the rules are either husks, clones, or drones, but they're just a solid unit. So let's go to the Centaurs. I have a unit of these upstairs that I've never touched. One of these days I probably will. They're exact same points. They lost the speed. They're down to 7. Why'd they gain a volley? Maybe we'll see if that matters somewhere. They technically have a volley now when they did not before. Otherwise, stats are all the same, except they lost their evade. They kind of removed evade from a lot of the units in this army that had evade 1. They went down to evade nothing. All right, they got their impact 3 with their brutal impact. They have their shields, so they're sitting at 4s then. And they have flurry. They're husk because they're an Avatara. That does mean that you have some potential synergies. If you're taking the right grouping, hey, they got some damage on them. I'm going to automatically be inspired, and you have some warlord abilities that could make your 6s into 1s once per round, once per game, I should say, and all of that. So before, they did not have shock. They might have had access to it in some way. I can't think of a way, but maybe. But their strain is giving them shock. So they're on 3. That would put them to 4. That helps on their impact, because hitting on 3s with impact 3 is decent. Hitting on 4s, getting that 1 extra, especially when you're at brutal impact 2, means you're going to really actually start hurting people. So you'll then get your shock. You're now at 4s, and then when I swing, I'm on 4s rerolling 6s. assuming I can allow myself to be inspired. So, quite good. And shock, I believe, happens even if you go through terrain. Yeah, so what's nice is if you had to go through terrain, I need to hit this target. They're in the way. The way things are set up, I'm going to have to. Might not be a bad idea. I get myself shocked, so at least I'm hitting on 4s. Yes, I will not get... Oh, actually, the rerolling 6 part don't matter because you have flurry anyway. So at that point, getting inspired doesn't make a difference. So yeah, I lose the impact. But if I'm going to have to get into someone, at least now I could be on 4s with full rerolls. I should be hitting them with pretty much everything I have. So they also have superior creations, taking 1 less wound. So if it's a 3-pack, you're only going to take 2 wounds. You're 5 wounds a pop. That means you got some play there. Resounding Malevolence. If during its activation the regiment performs a march action, immediately followed by a charge action, then until the end of this action, each failed defense roll of a 6 rolled by the enemy regiment causes to suffer an additional wound. So you can make the 6s 2 wounds. So you have an impacting 3, brutal impact 2 cav unit. You could give them shock to potentially put them on 4s for these. And we've had what does cav that have good impact and brutal impact want to do often? If you're not in the great position, because if you're in a position where you can charge and swing, that means your opponent might very well be in a position where they could charge you first instead. These guys can fight okay in close combat, not amazing. Yes, they have flurry, so they'll get a good amount of hits, but they don't have any minuses. So if they get to someone who's very defensive, you're kind of getting stalled out a little bit. But what I like about that, I mean, there's nothing not to like about that, but what I like about that is you're giving me an extra bonus for if I just do that move charge thing. If I catch myself far enough away that I am safe, I can get something extra when I hit you. Yeah, I'm looking for those 6s, but if you happen to roll 1 or 2 of them, you're now taking probably about a stand worth of wounds. 4 to maybe 5 or a little bit more. So I'm going to really actually get into you. Don't hold if you can actually get to someone's side, because if you only are really worried about for that particular round move charging, you might be able to move in such a way to get off to the side to then charge into the flank. So they kept the same points and they just got better. And they go very well with parts of the army. Being Husk means we saw previously for a few of them. I know the high lineage Highborn obviously will take them. It's the Incarnate Sentinels that he's limited by. The Prideborn is limited to only taking 2 Centaurs. But their supremacy that designate target. That's deactivated. +2 on the charge and reroll failed hit rolls until the end of the charge action. So if the lineage Prideborn is your warlord, that supremacy, someone else marks them, and then you are now much easier to charge in. You'll get to reroll, which is maybe that +2, maybe now sitting at a 9, maybe now you have a decent charge, because notice, oh no, they do have a standard bearer, good, cool, they're unstoppable. But even if not, then your move charge, now you're looking at 16 plus a d6, I'm hitting you, I could have shock, I'm on 4s, and I get rerolls. I'm very likely to get pretty much all 3 from everyone on that. If I am getting all 3, let's assume it's a 3-pack, that's probably about 8 to 9 hits. You're likely going to roll 1 to 2 6s in that. Lo and behold, if you happen to roll terrible, and we have all times where people roll very poorly, you might take a lot. So absolutely love them. They synergize very well with things that the army wants to do. And they are just a strong unit, especially because as we see some of those other units, bit expensive and good, but maybe don't have quite the speed or the push. These guys have the push. Leonine Avatara, absolutely love these models. I think these are absolutely great models. 180, so same cost, a little bit cheaper per additional stance if you actually do such a thing. They got faster. They're move 8 now. Still sitting on the same volley. Their clash actually went up by 1, so they can fight their way out of wet paper bag. 4 attacks, 4 wounds to pop. 4 resolve, defense 2, evade 3, so they lost the defense. They're a ranged unit. I'm not trying to have them fight in close combat. They have that acute senses where before they have fluid formation. Obviously, fluid is better, but they're kind of removing fluid from a lot of stuff, so it's not unheard of. And again, them being able to shoot out on any side means you're not necessarily in a poor position. They do have some impact, which is nice. So if someone is there and you want to shoot and you have to charge them to kind of finish them off, they got a wound left, maybe you do that, especially if it matters at a point because they are medium, so they can grab objectives for you. 3 shots a pop at 14 inches, armor piercing 2 with deadly shot. That is all the same. They're husk, which means that they could be the ones marking those targets, depending on what you take. They could be the ones that if someone has some wounds on them, then they're always aimed. So now they're hitting on 4s instead. You can give them precise shot. And they have superior creation, so they take 1 less wound, so that helps. Precise shot. I always remember which one is precise shot. Okay, so it's when a stand with this special roll performs a volley action, enemy regiments may not use the defense on hit rolls of 1. Okay, I couldn't. I mean, if you're shooting at, here's the thing: you're already AP2, so whatever you're shooting at probably doesn't have great armor at that moment anyway. Because generally in the game, the best armor that you normally see is like a 4. 3 is pretty typical. So 3 is putting you to 1s. 4 is maybe putting you to 2s. Yes, I know there's some spots like 8 to 5 with, other potential effects, or maybe like a 3, but you're hard in some amount, so you're not really going down low. But on average, the average defense in the game is probably a 3. And like defense 3 evade 1. Which means my AP2 is putting you to probably about the same as your evade anyway on sort of this typical unit, or at least typical units you're probably wanting to shoot these guys with. So I don't really care. If I'm shooting at Ash and Dawn, yeah, I'm going to take the precise shot. I want that. Because that way on my 1s, I just do flat wounds. I need to do flat wounds. But in most cases, you're probably not going to need it because the AP2 does the job already, or does the job almost good enough. With 14-inch range, if you can get within that 7 to get the extra shot, maybe then precise shot is better, but only 3 shots a pop. So a group of 3 is doing 10 shots because the leader model. On 10 shots, I'm looking at 1 to 2 precise. That may be no different. That's probably typically pretty much no difference, or a difference of 1. I don't know if I want to take, let's say it's a 3-pack, 2 wounds for that. Also, when I'm already only 4 wounds, I mean, I want to shoot someone. I want to mark them if I'm doing that. I want you to have some wounds on you because then maybe I will hit on 4s instead. But at that point, okay, I already be aimed. I could then move and shoot. Now affect on that 22-inch shot because I get that movement first while being aimed. And I don't know, you'd have to fight the right thing to care about the precise. I think most of the time, I'm probably not going to bother using that rule. Unless it's a very special unit. If it is, it's a great to have. But if it's not those, I don't know if I want to take those extra bits. Because let's face it, they're on defense 2 now, so they're not as survivable. Because what is my shooting unit probably going to do if I'm facing you? I'm going to shoot yours. Because yours has really good quality. Not a lot of quantity, but great quality. And like I said, and they have deadly shot base. Deadly shot is on the 1s, it's 2. I gotta check that. I don't want to talk about it, end up being wrong. Deadly shot. Oh no, that's when they roll a 6, it's 2 wounds. Okay. Yeah. So actually, with deadly shot, oh well, okay, they technically would roll the other ones because there is effects that could happen. But no, I'm probably fine with that. I'm probably not gonna bother using that. Again, if I'm facing 100 Kingdoms Cavalists, or maybe even just 100 Kingdoms in general, I'm happy with this. Most other armies, I'm probably not going to bother, because it probably isn't helping. It's fine. I mean, if they wanted it better, there's a few different rules they could give them. Instead, even just giving them like a +1 shot, I'd probably use that. I will take some wounds to get some extra shots, but that's all right. They are, like I said, in general, actually overall, compared to before, they are obviously better because they do the same sort of thing. They got a little bit something extra. Yes, they don't have flute formation, but that's going to be a change. And you could precise shot if you want to. Okay. And like I said, Clash 3 means that Impact now could do something. If someone's in your face and you shot them and there's a few wounds left, well, they're going to charge me anyway. I might as well charge into them. Maybe I can plink off the last wound. So Leonine Avatara, absolutely love them. If you are taking the character, a great call. Lineage Prideborn, because Lineage Prideborn looks like them, but just gets an extra shot. Has that Ceaseless Hunter, so they can fire in advance, so they could shoot and then move. Especially good if you are just trying to either finish off or if another unit's about to engage someone. Now you can get to a better position. That's about the main things he does, and obviously is Remorseless Hunter if you're taking that. All right. Very good. You want them. I think you absolutely want them. Let's take a look at the Abomination. The 5th anniversary version is great looking. Other one is, I've seen some cool forms where people have done some modifications, but the 5th edition anniversary special one is awesome. If I was running the army, I'd want one of those for sure. The Abomination is just it's a key model of this. Keep in mind that you're looking at first factions here, and you're looking at first monsters out there. So I want one available no matter what. Now, what Abominations were really great at before was very cheap missiles. They were very much sort of a glass cannon, because this was it used to be a move 10 monster with 10 wounds. Yeah, it had 10 attacks on 2s, but hey, it's got cleave, it's got flurry, it's got all those sort of things. So you're going to spend 1 or 2 turns just rushing up the field. I will be past the opponent, and my goal is all those soft targets in the back that you have your line in front of. No, I'm just going to eat all those. You have your archers in the back, they're sitting on a point or something like that, or they have the caster on them that's buffing your forces. Nope, I'm going to hit them, because this guy's enough to take any of those down. He's not going to stand up well in a fair fight to someone that can hit him, but going against that cheap sort of things, eat right through him. So let's see. He's 30 points more now. He's medium, so he's not a heavy monster. He lost 2 moves, so he's move 8. That is honestly really, really sad. The move 10 was huge, because you're looking at, I want to go hit your archers. You're looking at essentially a move charge on this guy. You're looking at 20 plus a d6. He's moving half the board, realistically, and unstoppable. So pretty likely half the board. Since he's medium, you could come in, even if you needed to on, say, turn 2 or 3, whichever one is, come in from a reinforcement. I'm on your side of the board by far, and then I'm 100% in your backfield, hitting wherever I want. So the little bit of slowing, yes, it's only a difference of 2 inches, but it's actually very meaningful. He's still on Clash of 2. He gained a volley, but I don't see any spots where any of these guys are going to shoot anyway, so who cares? He did get 2 more attacks, and he got 4 more wounds. For 30 more points, yes. Now at 14, he's a legitimate monster. Lost a resolve, going to resolve 3. But still the defense 3, but gained an evade. So that's always good. Cleave 1, got an extra impact set on 6 now. Flurry, absolutely necessary. Unstoppable, great. And Terrifying 1. So it's Strain, gets Relentless Blows. So Strain on this one would be a flat 3 damage. It does have the more wounds, and it has more attacks. So 2 more attacks and 4 more wounds. So I could use the ability and still be up on what was before. On 12 attacks, I'm expecting Relentless Blows 2 to maybe 3. So that's 2 to maybe 3 additional hits. That will let you, in the past, when you would smack into something that's even light, there's a chance you don't necessarily take it out fully because your clash isn't that great. But you'll bog them down at least, but then you might be stuck and someone else comes to deal with you or turns around or anything like that. With this bit of extra, couple more attacks, A way to get some relentless into there. Naturally only hitting on 2, so if you're not inspired, doing this means half of your hits that you make cause an extra hit. Even if you are inspired, it's essential on 3s, you are getting rerolls to all of that. You could actually have a good amount of 1s. So it could mean the difference of ensuring that you take down a unit that, instead of, oh, they're the 4 wounds a stand, they're the 5 wounds a stand. I'm looking at, say, Bow Chosen sort of thing. I'm not saying this will kill them for sure, but you can get the extra damage into them and all. And then just desserts. You gain additional ability depending on the sect. So if you chose the Sovereign Lineage, so the one that helps the Husk units, you get Hardened 1. It's none of the particular things are going to help him since he's a monstrosity. So you could give him Hardened 1. Good, but it depends on who you're playing into. The units that you're probably going to go and try to eat the lunch money of probably don't have a lot of cleave. They might have some AP. Probably don't have a lot of cleave. You're going Directorate, +2 to the March. Absolutely great. I forget which one is which, so I want to make sure I have this correct. Whose ability was what? Because this is now this has been out now for 2 days. Okay, the Director is the command card 1. So potential delay. Okay. The Director is a pretty good one. Again, the Underspire, are you taking loads of drones? If not, then Underspire doesn't do as much. It does give it some regen. It at least has the extra wounds. So, part that's good about this is if you are taking Underspire and you're really playing into having lots of drones and potentially clones and all of that, here's a hard-hitting piece. So here's something big that you can bring, and with a little bit of heal means you're much more likely to be using your strain because you're almost going to heal it up fully. So Director at that +2 March, I really do like that one. I think if you're running Director, you absolutely want one of these for the exact same reason we talked about. That move 10, just get into people's backfield. You know, the end of turn 2, if I came in, if I had an okay reinforcement line, even if I have any bit of a reinforcement line, because this is only one model at 4.5 inches, I'm on your side of the board. And then on turn 3, depending on where you put your stuff, I could legitimately charge an attack, or I'm move charging to your unit that you kept all the way in the back. So if you're going Directorate, I think you grab one of these guys. Sub 200, absolutely worth it. Sovereign Lineage, you can make an argument. You already have a lot of big beefy things, so maybe not. Underspire, giving it the regen. Again, this might be helpful because if you're going Underspires, you probably have a lot of clones. You probably have a lot of things that don't take damage well. And here's something that can go and just push your force forward. So that way your other units can get stacked in the way that they want. And it's an Abomination. Abominations are great. Who actually takes the Abominations? We know this are all, okay, restricted on a Biomancer. That's fine. Most abilities don't trigger onto monsters. Most things were non-monster regiment, so on and so forth. His Biomancies. So like Essence Transfer can't heal him, but you could use him to heal someone else. But a lot of them were, hey, something else. Oh, unstable, non-monster regiment. So a lot of the abilities don't help, but you can take them restricted there. He does not take one. Lineage Highborn does take an IA Bomb as restricted. None there. Merchant we know takes whoever he wants. And Pharaohmancer, Abomination. Yeah, so restricted a lot of options. You will have access to one of these. I think he's just cool. I think he's neat. Okay. He's 30 points more. You are spending more, but he has more survivability, which really does help. And that strain ability, even if you decide not to use it, he has more wounds, more attacks. He will get more done. So I think it's a fair gloat to have to spend a little bit more for that guy. All right, Siegebreaker. Siegebreaker went up by 20 points. He's now 210 points. Sorry, he's 230. He used to be 210. My apologies. He's heavy with the move 7. They give him volley 1. I so far haven't seen it matter. Maybe there's something somewhere that's going to be based off of a volley stat. I haven't seen it, but maybe. He gets 2 more attacks. He's at 12. 10 with Smite was great. 12 is even better. It did feel that he was nice, but if you hit the wrong thing, you just aren't doing enough damage. Like if your opponent rushes at you, may not do enough. This helps. He got defense 4, evade 4. Defense 4, resolve 4, no evade. Cool. He is fearless. Just before, he still has his smite, so you may not take defense against his attacks. He's got extra impact, and he's got brutal impact 3, so you're probably almost not taking any defense against his impacts, and you're not allowed to take it during his swings. And he's terrifying 1. He does not have unstoppable. Originally, he didn't, but in the very beginning, he was move 6 without unstoppable. Rough. Then they made him move 7 unstoppable. Cool. He could do a good bit more. They took away his unstoppable, but his strain for 3 wounds, and he has 18 wounds, so he gained 2 wounds as well. You can give him Juggernaut. So that's a flat 12 charge. Remember, Juggernaut is your charge becomes move plus 5. So if someone is sitting at the 11 to 12, that's the spot I want to sit, because then I will hit you. And my 6 impact, I'm on 3s. So I'm probably getting about 3 of those in. So that's about 3 almost no save. If you have a good evade, I don't want to hit you. I'm looking at other units. And then the 12 on that 12 attacks with that smite, I'm getting more through. Okay. In case you're somewhat new to the channel, I want to make sure this is clear. I love monsters. Even if they are not great, even if to an extent they're a detriment to my army, I take probably at least a monster in every list, and I often will take more than one. I rarely take more than one of the same type. That's just not me as a player. I don't like, in general, I don't take a lot of like the same unit repeatedly. For monsters, I'd rather multiples or multiple different. But for me, for that 20 points extra, him, even if I had to take some wounds to get Juggernaut, having those extra attacks and extra wounds, 100% worth it. Absolutely. Those alone do that for me. So I find he's worth it. If your area has a lot of, say Dweg, 100 Kingdom horses, sort of lists, this guy becomes a great piece that you can use, because those are armies where the evades are generally very, very poor. And they have very heavy units with almost no evade. He's even good into, so we've looked through Spires. They have several spots of 3s to 4 in defense with pretty much no evade if they have any. Some spots with lost evades. So he's really good into that. He's good into other monsters. Most monsters, not all. I know one of the Centaur Avatara, whichever one of the Sorcerer King ones, has evade 3. I know, again, Yokai can get to evade 3. But most monsters have like evade 1 to maybe 2, but their defenses are 3s and 4s. Even some of the good ones are 4 1s, or even if they're 3-1. I'm knocking you straight down to only be on saves of 1, or maybe even saves of 0, depending on what it is. So a list I build will probably have him in there. Again, I think he doesn't synergize depending on whatever group you take. Take Directorate, Underspire. I always forget the name of the Sovereign Lineage. I know it's a lineage, but I always forget the first word. Those don't really synergize too well with him, but he's just a very good, strong piece. He's a good anchor somewhere. This is the model that you want coming in, depending on how they've done their roles in turn 2. I might want him actually turn 4, because I want you to have committed your biggest, heaviest stuff, so that way I can line him up in the right spot to go and deal with it. Spots that I might struggle with otherwise. So who takes an A-bomb? I don't think, a Siege Breaker. No, High Clone. High Clone takes a Siege Breaker. I don't know if you necessarily always take the High Clone anymore, though. Siege Breaker for Lineage, which personally I would take the Lineage. Merchant Prince, we know we can take him there. I don't know why I clicked on that character. Oh, sorry, and Prideborn didn't take it. So Executor and Highborn, you're probably having one of those two. And if I have one of those two, unless I'm running like a pure Biomancer, Ferromancer sort of list. Actually, sorry, the Biomancer takes him as well, doesn't he? I think we saw that. No, he doesn't. Okay, I lied. I think he's really good. The 20 extra points is absolutely worth it. I think he is probably worth more than those 20 extra. Still keep him pretty cheap. And these two together, 1 and 1, if you end up taking it, you're still looking at just about 400 points for two very different monsters that are going to do very different things for you. So Siegebreaker, absolutely great piece in my mind, and awesome looking model. So big fan. Let's take a look at the Surveyor. Now, the Surveyor, I don't really have much experience with, I'll be honest. I've seen it, I looked through it, but I've never actually faced against it. So it went up by 10 points. Just as fast, shoots just as good, still 10 attacks. Lost a wound, it's at 14 now, and still has the 3 resolve, 2 defense, 2 evade, so you're just using evades. Fly, it's got its barrage of 10 at 12 inches. It's got 6 impact. It does have brutal impact 1, that's a nice gain. It lost a regular. Just checking. No, it doesn't have anything. So it can set a reinforcement for you. Very nice. And it is terrifying 1. It was not terrifying before. So it's now actually spooky as well. It's Strain, Microbial Shroud. It's an aura. Any emergence with an 8 cannot heal nor perform rally or combat rally actions. Okay, so assuming you're not say facing Dweg where some of those things just don't occur, I can now much easier break and shatter you. I can stop you from healing. I won't let you rally. And that means that, say that turn you weren't able to heal, so now you're broken. He's nearby. You weren't able to rally, and that means the following turn, even when he leaves, even if he goes away, you're still broken, so you'd have to time it differently. So, great little piece there. And then Spy and Descent. This regiment will form a free volley action during its activation. So, in addition to its regular targets, this volley action can target any regiment and moved over during the activation across the range of line of sight. So essentially, you can hit someone that you go over, you go past them, and even though they're no longer visible to you, you could still essentially do that to them. One part that's interesting that they don't necessarily say, when I guess you would measure at the end for distance, for effective range and stuff like that. That's what I would assume. I think the rule is that you measure normally shoot from the front arc. So you measure from the front arc. I wonder then in this case, would you still actually measure from the front? I don't know. Off of base rules, I would think you would. But that'd be interesting. It'd be something, if you're going to run this and you think it's something you're going to do, read through that a little bit to see if you think differently than I do. And if you do, great. If you do, let me know in the notes. Sorry, the comments below. All right. So he's a little bit different than he used to be. He used to have a way within 8 inches, roll 2d6 for your charges of friendly units. Okay, cool. In this army, yes, very useful. But since you're getting a lot of standard bears for free, not quite as necessary, but that was good. He did get some actions, including Induce Lethargy, so he used to be able to lower some defenses and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, he used to get a free action, essentially, of a Ferromancer or Biomancer ability. And he used to be able to give out some Vanguard, but it was a little bit weird. It's the regiment had to complete its activation. You may go with the next card, and if it's a regiment reviving from reserves, then you may get Vanguard. So if you stack it correctly, very useful, but it's very situational. This guy you had to have him say come in turn 2. He's going to help turn 2, 3, and probably 4. Nice, and it's also then forced, like me, depending on the unit, some of my units that I truly care about when they come on, they might be some of my last cards. If it's like my monster, I don't want my monster early. I would like my monster to come on late. I want to know where to commit him. So a little bit of a different piece. He's probably now a little bit more combat. He is more combat oriented, rather than the types of support he did before. If no one is close, you don't have to worry about the strain. But if you are in the middle of units taking 3 damage to stop them from healing, depending on the force, if they're especially you're against other Spires, someone else has healing, there's Hatsu over there, or even the rallying combat rally. So now I can break and shatter you easier. I can time it better. I don't have to rush through. I think it's monstrosity, so army rolls don't go quite as much. There's only one way to like heal them and all of that. But getting the free volley is good. So, I mean, you could shoot someone, charge, attack them. Yeah, you're only 2s with a 10 attack, but you do have a good amount of impact. You have 6 impact with brutal impact, and you're terrifying. So you will get something through. He's only 108 points, so he is cheap. So overall, he is serving a very different purpose in my mind. He is not buffing your army, really. He is going out to harm people instead. And maybe they found before, for how cool he was, he wanted to kind of stand in the back, where now he wants to go out and go forward. So, and sitting at medium, so coming in a good time. And like I said, and now he actually wants to push forward even more. He's no longer regular. He can actually go forward and set a good line for you. If you have some lights that are up, he could come in from the side, line himself up to get some shots, because he'll say do 2 moves, take a shot. So he's shots out 28 inches and so on. The next turn, I'll shoot someone. Maybe I'm I'm within like a 4 on that charge. Maybe I can charge them, or I can maybe move charge them to try to finish someone off, or try to put the last little bit, smack into some of your, like I said, your backfield or further back shooting units. Or I hit someone with some damage, and then I push him into someone. I use him for a reserve line, come in with someone, and then I go and just sacrifice him. I go and put him into a unit that I really need to be kept back for a while, because he has 14 wounds. His evade isn't great, but maybe he can hold someone back and get some damage into them as well. So if you happen to have one, because he is a very cool looking model, I think you're going to like what you see. I like the change overall, because I think before he played essentially as a unit that you're keeping away, where now you don't care about keeping away anymore. And if you only want one move, you could actually move, aim, and then take your free volley. So you are a more effective shooter. So I like the changes. I think the rest of the army supports more usefully. And I think he has a good defined role that will really help you go further than the other one. All right, Desolation Beast. I know they had him listed, I believe. Yeah. Though there's probably no real reason to look at it because he wasn't out before. So let's just look at them currently. He's 230 points, so he is expensive. He's neat looking. He's a little weird. I kind of like the other one a little bit better, but he's a little weird looking. All right, he's heavy. He's got move 6. He's volley 3. He's clash 2. He's got 8 attacks. He's the one that shoots more, so that's why. He's 16 wounds, 3 resolve, 3 defense. He's got that no evade. He's lethal demise 8. So if you're in combat and you take him out, take 8 hits. That's great. He's got trample 6. So he wants to. What's weird is he's the shooting one. He's the shooting combat. Not that I'm seeing. Well, it punishes you if you get into him. He's got 6 impact. He has dread, so you will not be inspired when you're facing off this guy. He does 12 shots. Remember, based on 3s, 16-inch range. It's armor piercing 2. So his. Oh, they didn't put it. His strain is the hypercatalytic discharge. They talked about it before. That's supposed to be the strain ability for him. Any regiments don't get to use their evade when making rolls against him. So if you are shooting at someone's good evade unit, you're shooting, I'm thinking, shooting type units or other things like that. They're, defense 2, evade 2. I can make so you don't get to your evade, and I'm AP 2. So you're just taking the flat damage. I do have 12 shots. I'm on base of 3. I could be aiming to be on 4s. So I'm looking at like 8 hits. Maybe I'm just making you take 8 flat damage. Visceral Bombardment. While performing a volley action, each unmodified hit roll of 1 immediately inflicts a hit to every other enemy regiment within 3 of the volley target. So if your opponent is closely packed together, your ones hit into them. They do get their armor-piercing roll, as well as the strain ability should be active. They don't cause morale, though. So if people are grouping up, I might be able to get a little bit of damage onto some of the other units. What's nice about him, so he hits pretty well. He's got a good shot of what it does, but he's got a good amount of impact. He's got the trample and that lethal. So if someone actually is getting close to you, there's nothing wrong with shooting, rushing into them. He doesn't have the best hitting profile, but that trample, that's just 6 automatic at the end. So I can shoot you with 12, hopefully get a good amount through. I can then charge you. I'll get 6 on that. I'll impact on that 6. I'll get 2 or so. So maybe you take a wound, maybe you take 2 wounds on that. But then a flat just make you roll an extra 6 at the end. And if you are very wounded, I will shoot and just charge into you, because then I'm hoping to lethal demise you. This is a monster you might... It punishes your opponent if they're going to try to take you out in close combat. And the things that are going to be hitting a monster like this to try and one-shot it will be hitting it often in close combat. So Desolation Beast, a really good shooting platform. I think this army has multiple units that have very good shots and have quality shots. Leonine Avatara, also armor-piercing too. This guy armor-piercing too. So you are getting to a point where you could have a very strong shooting backfield, shooting a pretty good range. He's 12. They were 14? He says, without remembering exactly. Yeah, 14. So quarter up the board, and if the targets that you wouldn't want to shoot with them because of the evade, you could have him do it instead and just remove their evade. They just don't get it. So this is an army where you could have, even if you want to go cheap with things, a massive units in front, like drones and clones, or mostly drones because they're very cheap, but drones and clones in front. This is a fire base behind. I mean, you could even go with, if you truly want, you could pop some Marksman Clones in there as well, just for quantity of shots. But you have a few ways to get some really strong shooting into this list. So, loving the Desolation Beast. And he's the new model. I mean, I don't know. For me personally, I go with the new models. All right, Consumption Beast. I think we got him. Yeah, he's the last one. So let's do this real quick. He's 200 points. He is move 8, so he's faster, which is nice. Volley 1, that's fine. Clash 2, he's got 10 attacks at 20 wounds. He's 4 resolve, 2s and 2s for his saves. The other guy was 3s and 0s. Okay, he is unstoppable. He's got cleave 1. He's got impact 6. He is fearsome. There it is. His strain, he gets dread. So you don't get to inspire. He starts with 8 wounds on him. So, Indiscriminate Omnivore, every time another friendly regiment within 12 activates their strain, he heals 2 wounds. Only 1 beast can heal from this per each. So he's a medium, unlike the other one that was just heavy. So he's a medium. So he's out there earlier. Since you have some units, especially depending on what you take, if you're taking under Spire and all, you have some heal, you could be potentially doing strain effects with regiments that have ways to heal, just to be able to pump him some wounds. Gorged. The first time he heals up to his maximum wounds. So he's essentially starts 8 wounds down. Starts on 12 wounds, 8 wounds down. But the first time he heals back up fully, he'll get 6 more attacks. So he'll get 16 attacks. And has the strain abilities always active and loses the Indiscriminate Omnivore special rule. So he can then no longer heal. Now, you could play a little bit with this if people are hurting him a little bit to kind of keep him reasonably topped up, and then the turn you really want to push him in, do that last strain ability on someone nearby. It's within 12, so not even that close, but someone else nearby. Go up that last little bit, and now he's a lot stronger, and he's been healed up. So you could play with the timing of that, which I think is very strong, especially, 12 wound is still pretty good. Yes, his defensive stats aren't that great, but I don't mind getting him to, say, about 18 wounds, let him do a little bit of fighting, maybe on some of those lighter targets, they do some wounds to him. I then do some effects. Keep in mind that there is that one item that does some heals to monsters. Let me pull up what that item was. It was an eccentricity, I believe. The only heal effect for a monster. Was it not? Oh, I'm looking at the prior. I don't know if that's going to matter. I don't think it was an apparatus. Oh, but like biomancers have biotic renewal, so you could be causing some damage to your unit, then using this to heal back that damage. We know there's other ways to get additional regen, so that way you're healing up your units fully. It wasn't that. It was an eccentricity. There it is. It's an apparatus, so it's biomancers or ferromancers or merchant prince, I believe, takes them as well. There's grotesque elixir. So monstrosity within 12 inches heals d6. You can spend a token and make it 2d6. Keep in mind, if the merchant prince is your warlord, you have some spare dice, so you might have a spare 6 hanging around, which means that you can then time exactly when you get him to those wounds. And Endless Hunger. When this regiment forms a class action against any regiment of a smaller size, so anything smaller than a monster. I know there's some monsters that are 4 as well, but essentially brutes or infantry. Add +1 to his clash, so he becomes clash 3, and he becomes terrifying 2. So he is not your giant monster killer. If you want your monster killers, that is your Desolation Beast, your Leonine Avatara, that is your Siegebreaker Behemoth. He is your infantry and brute destroyer, especially if you get him to the 16 attacks. That is huge. And even then, depending on what you're going against, maybe you're fine with keeping him the way he is for a little bit, so you can kind of play your cards until you're ready to pop him to 20 wounds to 16 attacks, and then you're essentially on clash 3 against all that sort of stuff. So for 200 points, he's a bit on the cheaper side, which is nice. That is because I think he's hard to use. I think to use him effectively, you really have to plan out what to do. Siegebreaker, push forth, I hit someone. Yeah, if they got great evade, that's a problem. Avoid those things. Try to avoid a little bit, and most stuff doesn't have super great evade. He starts as a very killable monster. Because, yeah, his resolve is 4, sure, but he's defense and evade 2. So someone with 12 wounds is not the toughest thing to do into something like that. And notice, he's fearsome, but not fearless. They're not the same rule. So, move 8 with Unstoppable is nice. I said he can give dread, but if you pop up all the way, then he just always has dread. He always has dread. He has 16 attacks. At that cleave 1, he's got some impact. So he is not a replacement for the other monsters because he works a little bit differently. He's not a point and shoot. You definitely do have to plan out what to do with him. If you are taking him, I think if you're taking a monster and you have someone who has access to the apparatus, I think you take the elixir for 20 to potentially heal them up. Especially if you take if you have a Biomancer Warlord, or if you have Merchant Prince Warlord, you 100% take it. Because at least Biomancer, you could roll 2 dice, and you're less likely to get just ones. But Merchant Prince, you'll probably, in those 5 dice you roll or other ones, you're going to have a 5 or 6 sitting in there. You can then heal him up essentially a quarter of his wounds. But you're going to have to be careful with how you use this guy. The fact he's a medium comes in early. I think what you do is you pop him in somewhere early. You have a few units nearby that don't mind using their ability. Either they don't mind using their ability because of the use they'll get, or they have ways to sort of heal it back up, or they have characters, a Biomancer with them, with their that heals them back up, or something else that heals them back up, because your Spires, you got some options for that. You get them close to the 20. You then do, depending on what you're facing, if someone's going to be plinking with shots, maybe I wait a little bit to pop them to 20. But if someone's pushing some cav, some horses, they're pushing a tanky dwag at me, whatever it is, no, I'm going to pop him to 20 and then let him take his 16 cleave 1 attacks into people. And he's going to have dread sitting on him, which means that I'm just going to be more effective, which will help because I'm not survivable. Of the two, so let's assume let's assume you either can't magnetize him or you're going to run it as whichever way it is. I don't want to tell you to do two, one of each. Me personally, if I was doing them, I probably would buy one of each. That's just the kind of person I am. But this is about the only game I play right now. But if you were strapped and you were only going to do one either way, keep in mind, it can save you 10% by using that discount code. But if you're only going to do one, I would say it depends on what your plan is. If you want a good backfield shooting, you want to run some Leonine with this guy, you can now really hurt some people in shooting. If you want, to me, maybe the cooler piece, but very tough to use, the army, I think in general, is a bit easier to work with. So maybe there's the bandwidth to make the weird for him work. Because this army used to have a lot of weird to it that you'd really have to get going. They don't have that anymore. They're a little bit more, they still have good abilities, but they're a little bit more straightforward. You don't have Ferromancers who are like, okay, I need to put this card here because then I'm going to get this ability, but now the card's going to go to all that. You don't have that now. You don't have a lot of the crazy difficulty to get to the middle. So then maybe this guy, the Consumption Beast, is enough to make it all work for you. Of the two, though, for the moment, I just like the idea of a little bit more of a shooting base. I think that sounds pretty fun. If I'm running my my lineage type list, if I'm running a lineage list, I think actually many lists I'd probably want the Desolation a little bit more. But the 30 points could actually make a difference as well. Being the bit cheaper and being close combat. I'm thinking for the stuff I'm bringing, I have a good amount of close combat. I could see, though, if you're really running a bunch of shooting stuff, that you want consumption because you want something that's going to be a big concern to people. Also, what I will say, it also boils down to, if you think through the strains that you have, some of the regiments care. Like Siegebreaker really cares. Some of them, like when we look at Leonine, I don't really care about that. If you have multiple with superior creations, it becomes a little bit more attractive because I will take less wounds to heal you to get you better. And then once you're the 20 who cares, just go anywhere. I think especially, I would say he's iffy if I don't have a Merchant Prince or Biomancer Warlord. And I need that item. If for some reason you weren't taking the item, don't bother with it. So if you're going to run, say, one monster, of the two, I would probably take Desolation. If you're going to run maybe two monsters, or something like that, or you want some variety to it, or Merchant Prince Warlord, then I'm grabbing him, I'm grabbing that upgrade, and he's going to be at 20 wounds whenever I want. All right, so let's finish this up now that we went through all the various units. So I was making some lists there. I was going to maybe put the list in this one. I'm probably actually going to put the list in something separate. I want to do a shorter, just, kind of overview for someone who doesn't want to listen to me talk for hours upon hours going through every little detail. Personally, me, like when I'm painting, that's what I do. I'll watch random videos or stuff like that of people just going over things because that just focuses me in on what I'm doing. And, what better to be working on the models than listen to people talk about the models, to be looking at the models, all that kind of stuff. So, all right. So overall, I will say for the moment, I am rather happy with what they did with Spires. Spires were in a reasonably bad place. Part of the reason they were in such a bad place is they didn't have the tools to do what you wanted to do with Spires. So they had their characterization. We take wounds to be able to deal wounds because, I take damage to be able to have these different bonuses or effects to do something to you. The problem was there was a good bit of convolution in some spots. Ferromancers were a bit convoluted. Getting certain biomancies to work were a little bit tougher. Some of the units weren't doing enough. You had Flare in several spots, but you had no Cleave. At least when we look at, the the brutes and centaurs and stuff like that. So I had a good amount to be able to roll some dice, but I didn't necessarily have that punch. Now, it got a little bit better when they gave them some other pieces, but they're still lacking a lot. They felt underwhelming in general. Also because their army rule, partially also because their army rules and masteries and mutations and all of that felt like you had to put too many things together to try to get something out, and what you got out often felt reasonably mediocre. So, how is it truly different here? One, the army rules are very strong. I think the strain idea, both essentially normalizing the curve of it's a wound per stand or 3 for a monster, really helps in compared to Burnout, because we've all had good and bad rolls, and I've watched Burnout absolutely level some units. Um, Same thing even with, say, the Catabolic Node. The Catabolic Node, I've had it do more damage to my units than the opponent. I've had to do nothing to them, terrible damage to me. A bit more reliable with the way it's done. The Biomancies and Ferromancies both help you in very direct and useful ways, or do something very strong to your opponent. When I look at it now, I remember trying to use a Ferromancer before and just struggling to get it to work to the level I needed it to work to make the army work. I feel like now a good bit more straightforward. The merchant character, I think, has a very good strength. I think now you will see other warlords than just the High Clone Executor. I think his ability is good. It's just not the one that I'm super excited about for the things that I like personally. They really distinguished the play styles. They said, hey, you want to take this? Here's all the cool things you can do. You want to be direct? You want to be uninspired? You want sovereign lineage? We're going to give you some clear focus for what you'll do. Some strains are very good. Some strains are a little bit more up in the air, but that's okay. If they find they need to tweak anything, I think that's a good little spot for them to tweak. Points in general are reasonably similar, so quite a decent amount of things actually went up, but you tended to get something for going up. So to me, that says overall they didn't feel that Spires were lacking due to necessarily the overall what the units have or do, but maybe they just didn't have enough. You had standouts and all, but you also had a lot of units that just felt very meh. I would say, trying to think of big winners and potential losers. Big winners, I think, is the Merchant Prince is great. I think every character other than the High Clone Executor is probably a bit of a winner. I think their abilities, base what they've done is similar. Biomancies and Ferromancies are definitely a lot better, I feel personally. It's a shorter list of upgrades. They feel a lot more focused. They can do a lot more. We talked about how the Surveyor used to, you can give some reroll charges or essentially 2 dice on charges. Hey, I got an upgrade for that now. I think all the characters went up except the High Clone Executor, especially because its supremacy is not nearly as good. There's no way you can contend with that. Getting 3 turns in a row is better than like anything. Or just about better than anything. So, but I think all the other characters now have very good spaces in which they can go. For unit wise, I'm just scrolling through them on the other side of the screen. I don't trying to think like Bound Clones, I think had a nice glow up for what they do. You now have a good survivable spot to put your infantry characters if you want. Horse-grown drones do what they've always done, and the better or worse about there. Stryx had the role, to my mind, changed a little bit with the way that they work. Brutes, I'm a little bit back and forth on. Brute drones, they're probably good with what they have. They're just situational. It depends on exactly what your opponent is coming at you with. Incarnate Sentinels, I like. Centaurs, I'm just thumbing through them. Abomination, depending on which way you take it, gets some very big differences. And all the monsters that they have, I think, are really cool. I think they have very good effects. For a unit that, like I think maybe didn't get all they necessarily need. So maybe brute drones. Avatara, again, of course, still have the issue of if you have any cleave, they might evaporate very quickly. Losing fluid formation on a lot of the units and getting acute senses obviously hurts, but that's just going to be a thing across the board anyway. Honestly, I'm probably still not big on Stryx personally. Onslaught drones, I'm personally not huge on. Nothing terribly wrong with them, but hey, Oblivious is fine. Flurry's good when you're on 2 with 5 dice, but just bad saves and doesn't feel like they do enough. So I'm not really enthused about like Onslaught drones. Drones in general are just not big to me. Force guard drones are fine because they're cheap and we know what they do. But all the other ones I'm just meh about. But that's me personally. That's just my play style and the things that I personally like. Except maybe Desolation Drones because they're just fun. Although, yeah, they're about the same actually in terms of how good or bad from before. So now still got to sit down and play against them or play as them as well. My hope is next week, depending on some stuff that's going on, to maybe be able to get a game in. I'm at least going to come up with some different lists. And as always, let me know what you guys think as well. Do you think they went far enough? Do you think they did enough? Is there synergies that you're noticing, especially with some of the upgrades on the characters? I know I went through the upgrades in the last video, but I've only now just started trying to put together what I think those synergies will actually do for us. Or do for a Spires player, because it's always nice. It's all well and good to look at it and say, hey, if I put these upgrades on this character, here's all the awesome things they can do. Okay, how many points are you spending for that? What is the viability of that happening? How many hoops must you jump through for that cool effect? In the one list I just built, my lineage highborn, I gave him that upgrade that lets him have the action of healing because I said, okay, maybe an Avatara, maybe that's a way to make that work. Maybe I can heal them kind of back up. I'm still not entirely sold on it, but I have the spare points. I will find for the list that I built, I was having some issues kind of filling it out without taking tons of upgrades. Nothing wrong with taking a good amount of upgrades. I just personally don't always take a whole lot. I did throw in a few. I think my list had like 2 monsters, so that Grotesque Elixir went in. I will say, looking at, there's a lot of upgrades that I want to take or I want to find spots. I didn't put the Degenerative Aura. I think that's going to go on my Underspires list because that's, that those sort of things are just fun. And I didn't put a Merchant Prince in there. And my next list is definitely going to have one. My Directorate list, I think, would probably greatly benefit from Merchant Princes and all. So what I will say is, I think they did them good. I have a reasonably upbeat feeling about them. Like when they redid things like, say, Sorcerer King, especially when they got some of the other modifications, are not necessarily as upbeat about those. I'm much more upbeat about this. And it's a wait and see. All right, well, that'll do it for this particular episode. This one went for quite a while. Like I said, other things you're going to see, I am going to make a shorter form discussing, like when I do the one discussing different lists that I make, that'll be a shorter review as well of just talking about the highlighted features. And I'll probably do that. And then once I actually get some games in with it, talk about it. Hey, now that I've played it, where are the real thoughts? Because to me, it's not real till it's on the table. And especially, it's not real till it's on the table and your opponent gets to do things about what you say. I can say, hey, this unit, when I do this effect onto them, and then this other thing goes. And so, yeah, it's all well and good. And then they, hit me with some Crimson Tower, and that unit over there evaporates, and all my plans fall apart. It's meaningless until you actually have someone trying to stop you. So if it takes 7 steps to make something happen, what's the chance you're going to get your 7 steps? So you're going to see that. There's a variety of other things. I'm actually going to do an update video, which you might see before or after this. That's going to discuss just what I'm currently doing on the channel, where I'm going from here, and plans for the close future as well as long-term future. All right, well, that's more than enough. So on behalf of everyone at the show, then, have a good hobby. It's great gaming.